China is enjoying its best in history ties with African nations, leader Xi Jinping said on Thursday as he pledged $15 billion in financial support for the continent in addition to military aid. Okay, so before we get into the details, just so you can understand what is going on and what we're going to talk about today, this summit that happened really allows Xi Jinping to flaunt China's prominence on the world stage. Having African leaders as allies allows Xi Jinping to wield diplomatic influence at the United Nations. China is also expected to woo African leaders with more investments. China will lobby for more access to important minerals like lithium, copper, and cobalt. Beijing will also likely push for more exports of its China-made products. With China-African Summit, Beijing continues to expand its influence. China is increasingly countering US and European influence in Africa. And lastly, China is unmatched when it comes to being Africa's economic partner. With the intensification of this great power competition with the United States, China is coming to the realization that it has to rely on the global South as the foundation for its diplomacy. The choice of African countries in this great power competition is becoming more important than ever because Africa is such a big bloc in the global South. Dozens of African leaders gathered Thursday in Beijing for a summit that signals China's influence in a continent that it hopes will be a key ally in pushing back against a US-led global order. China and Africa should rally their populations together to become a powerful force and write a new chapter in peace, prosperity, and progress, Xi Jinping said, as he sought to bolster relationships seen as key to Beijing's position as a rising global power. Xi Jinping said that China-Africa relations are at their best in history and vowed to elevate China's bilateral relations with all African countries with which it has formal ties to the level of strategic relations. Xi separately pledged another $280 million in aid to African countries, split evenly between military and food assistance. The announcements are a sign that Beijing wants to demonstrate its commitment to the continent, despite a recent slowdown in overseas development. Lending, and as Africa struggles with its foreign debt, including those owed to China. The pledge of $140 million in military aid is the largest amount that China has earmarked for this purpose at the 3-yearly Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, signaling the increasing importance of security in the relationship between Beijing and its partners in Africa. Leaders from South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, all assembled in the Chinese capital this week for a 3-day forum that Beijing has hailed as its largest diplomatic gathering in years. By the way, I get goosebumps when I watch this video, like with the music in the background, because like I understand he's powerful because he's giving a lot of money and it's amazing, and that's probably why these people respect him. But oh wow, when I watch this video, I'm just like, this man has so much power. Like, these people respect him so much, and then I completely understand why all the countries are scared of China, because he just has this powerful aura around him. But yeah, amazing, really. This year's event comes amid questions about the direction of those relations, as Beijing, long the driving economic power in Africa, has been recalibrating its extensive economic ties to the continent, while other major powers are ramping up their own efforts to engage Africa. The relationship has moved beyond trade and investment to take on political overtones. Modernization is an inalienable right of all countries, Xi Jinping said, but the Western approach to it has inflicted immense sufferings on developing countries. Since the end of World War II, third world nations represented by China and Africa countries have achieved independence and have been endeavoring to redress the historical injustices of this modernization process. China has really tried to position itself as a leader of the global south, a catchphrase for the developing world. While others don't necessarily see China as the leader, its message of rewriting the international order resonates with African nations that feel frustrated and abandoned by their traditional Western partners. I mean, this is just a raft of support, right? She pledged of $50 billion to the continent over the next 3 years, a mix of credit funds, assistance, and private investment from Chinese firms. While lower than the $60 billion pledged in 2015 and 2018 respectively, it appears to be aimed at sending a strong signal to visiting leaders about China's commitment to the continent. In his 10-minute speech, Xi Jinping outlined 10 action areas for cooperation over the coming 3 years. So this was including infrastructure connectivity, trade, security, green development, an area where Beijing is widely seen as pushing to enhance its exports of green technology, which I've also talked about before in my previous video about how China is really focusing on going green. So what really is Beijing looking for in all this, giving away all this money, giving away this support? What is in it for China? So leaders in Beijing are seeking investment, trade, and support to industrialize and create jobs. That includes a push for China to import more processed goods from Africa, rather than simply exporting and processing raw materials, like Africa's highly sought after critical minerals. Following Xi's speech, African leaders also gave remarks, with South Africa's Ramaphosa praising China's solidarity with the continent. He pointed to global challenges including conflict, climate change, and a global contestation for critical minerals that is fueling geopolitical rivalries. These challenges affect all nations, but are more often severely felt on the African continent. Yet, amid these challenges, there is hope and opportunity, Ramaphosa said. Ramaphosa never gave that good speech in South Africa, so good job to him for doing it in front of Xi Jinping. But yeah, I can promise you that about 2 weeks ago, I looked into maybe selling products either from China to South Africa or selling South African products here. So this is really all just a coincidence, but it's definitely nice to hear. I just hope it makes a difference in South Africa and that the people also get behind this, understand the project, because without people looking after things in South Africa, like not stealing cables, lower crime rates, etc., it's really important to have the people working together, as a nation. Otherwise, it won't work. Otherwise, South Africa won't improve. So obviously, this is huge for China, and it's very important strategic relationships, right? This year's gathering comes as China's long-standing relations with Africa appear even more critical for Beijing amid rising frictions with Washington. The US and Europe have also been ramping up their own efforts to engage Africa and access its critical minerals, widely seen as a bid to encounter inroads that China has made both politically, and in the continent's resources sector. You know, in his address to the people, Xi Jinping played up what Beijing hopes is a kindred political stance with the continent, hailing a joint vision for shared future, a key buzzword he uses to denote alignment with China's vision for world order that provides an alternative to the one championed by the US. He also pointed to what he described as the great suffering of developing countries under the West's historical process of modernization. Observers say Beijing is even more keen to use this year's gathering to signal its ongoing commitment with the intensification of this great power competition with the United States. China is coming to the realization that it has to rely on the global south as the foundation for its diplomacy. The choice of African countries in this great power competition is becoming more important than ever because Africa is such a big bloc in the global south. Security is just as big, right? Especially for African countries, especially for South Africa. So Xi Jinping's push to bolster security is also a sign of how Beijing is looking to expand its strategic partnership with a region that has emerged as a keynote in China's military ambitions. In addition to the $140 million in military assistance announced on Thursday, Xi Jinping pledged to train 6,000 military personnel and 1,000 law enforcement officers and establish a partnership with Africa to implement the Global Security Initiative, referring to his broader vision to reshape global security architecture away from the US alliance-based security system. Xi Jinping alluded for this in his comments, calling for China and Africa to jointly maintain the safety of personnel and projects. That is the end of this very informative video. So interesting. It's still going on here in Beijing, but I just wanted you guys to know what is going on and how important this is for China mostly to compete against the US and become politically stronger and just become more and more powerful. And yes, as a South African, it also helps, you know, African countries. So I'm very motivated by what's going on in Beijing right now. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for more videos and let me know if this was interesting to you. Like, do you like me talking about these kind of things? Because yes, I do think as a South African and living in China, it was quite important for me to talk about. But let me know what are your thoughts, because these videos are for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Proud to talk about it. Enjoy the rest of your day and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.